Welcome, everyone. I have a few more people coming in. We're going to get started. My name is Lisa Chiarello, and I'm with Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Sussex County. And tonight you will be hearing a presentation from Bruce Crawford titled Home Landscape, Delight or Disaster. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to make sure everybody, if we can have everybody, please make sure that you keep your video off and that we mute everyone because we are recording this session, and that will allow for the video to work better for the presentation and for the recording, please. Because all these sessions will be recorded, you will be able to receive a link to the recording. And if you have any questions, we're going to be using the chat box for all of our questions. So if everyone can keep your video off and keep yourself muted so that the presentation will run smoothly, that would be great. If you are not familiar with where the chat box can be found, it's on the bottom of your screen. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll find it looks like a bubble, like a talking bubble. And if it's not showing, then it would be under the More button. I have already, if you open the chat box, you'll see that I have already placed for you 2 handouts from our presenter, from Bruce Crawford. And if you click on those, they're PDF files. You can save those for your own use. So they're going to create there's a whole lot of notes in there for you that cover all 3 sessions. So please be aware that that's a resource available to you. And at this point now, I'd like to introduce our speaker, who is Bruce Crawford. He will be presenting for us tonight. Bruce has over 25 years of landscape design experience, and he is currently now Rutgers Program Leader in Home and Public Horticulture. And he's going to set up his presentation now, Bruce, and take right over.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. So it's been, I know a couple of people in the audience, so it's fun to see. And a couple of people have shared some of their interest in what they're looking for. But you know, this is something that I'm very passionate about. I've been doing this since I was 22 or 23. And I've always loved plant material, which is unusual. But then how do you put it into a design so that it is not confusing and it doesn't it complements the home and it complements what you need, and it doesn't become sort of overly busy and doesn't really satisfy your needs. And so that's what we're going to talk about over the next 3 weeks. And so tonight we're going to be sort of more of the theory part. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to be the bolts and nuts, so to speak, as Lisa put it together. And so we'll be looking at, tonight we're going to be looking at space more than we're going to be looking at plants. But it's all about plants. And if, those who know me, you know that I love plants. And I just have to make a little mention because a lot of people don't know what the New Jersey Ag Experiment Station is all about, which is NJAS. And it's essentially, it funds a lot of the plant breeding. It funds the extension work. And so when you see the Cornus Cusa Scarlet Fire at various nurseries, that came out of the experiment station. So Tom Molnar did that work. And it's one of the best pink or red bracted Chinese dogwoods on the market. So I'm just giving a little shot of promotion there. So anyway, when you're looking at your design, you really have to, you know, step back and really be honest with yourself. You know, what is it that, what's my style? You know, is it, am I very casual? Am I very formal? Am I a lot of fun? Am I serious? And what's my budget? So, because a lot of people say, gee, I'd really love that Mercedes. I have no idea what class that is or model, but it sure looks pretty expensive. And I think everybody remembers the Pinto, which when they got hit from behind, they blow up. And which that's not the garden design that you want. So we want to make sure that you get out of the Pinto, but at least you know, what is it that you're looking for? And so we're going to be talking a lot about elements of design and principles of design. We'll be getting into that a little bit further. And so this is just sort of the overshot here. But then I also want to talk, and these are my own thoughts on design.
No, I'm just trying to hook up to this.
So what are the
Trying to hook up to
senses
this
of
stuff.
design? So when you look at both the elements and the principles, these were developed for sculpture. They were not developed for landscape work. And so the one thing that you notice that everything there is based upon vision. It's based upon sight. So these are very good theories, which we'll work about that will help the design work, but they don't do anything with a sense of smell or taste or touch or hearing. So, and these are an important part of garden design. And to be out in a garden and in winter and hear the wind go through a pine tree, I think is really magical. And how many times have you come up to a rose and been discouraged because it had no fragrance, and or got excited because you touched a lamb's ear or one of the yak rhododendrons, which have indimentum or felt underneath the leaf. I mean, it's just a great part of the garden. So we want to make sure that we include that in the garden design. And we also want to include biodiversity. So I'll spend a couple of minutes on this. So obviously this portrays more with plants, but since we're talking about design theory, this is part of the picture. And so a lot of it is, you know, we don't think about the creatures that eat our plants or that need our plants to live and to survive. And so we oftentimes get upset when we see holes in our plants. My gosh, something's eating it. We've got to spray it. But in reality, you really want our native caterpillars and insects to eat some of our plants because they in turn will provide food for other animals, including our birds. And so a lot of people look at turf, and I remember I was back in the 60s, and I'm sure everybody here remembers the 60s, and looks at, you know, turf and says, wow, it was sort of promoted as a great living part of the garden, and it's a necessary part of the garden. But when you look at what it offers as far as biodiversity, it's very little. So so one of the things that we'll be talking about in the coming weeks is you know, how to enhance that. And when we look at it, we always think biodiversity. It sounds big. It's beyond my ability. It's over my pay raise and my pay scale. So and so it seems like it's beyond us. And so I always like to pick this picture out because just like it was beyond the person who was you know, painting the lines on the side of the road to move the grass out of the way, he in turn just decided to go around the grass because it was far simpler. So, but in reality, it's easy. And so it could be as simple as planting a few native plants. And so part of it is with our pollinators. And so these are our native bees. They are small. They're not aggressive. They don't sting you. So we don't really take notice of them. Sometimes they look like flies. They live in the ground. They're not gregarious, so they don't protect the hive, so to speak. So that's why they don't sting you. But they are very, very functional, and they're very, what's the word I'm looking for, efficient at pollinating plants. And so when you look at an American holly and you look at them when they're flowering in May, you'll see all these little flies appears hovering around them, but they're actually our native bees. And when you look at an oak or a cherry tree and you see holes in the leaves, that's, oh my gosh, you know, something's eating the tree. This is horrible. But oaks feed 557 species of caterpillars. And when you look at what a warbler couple will need to feed their hatchlings, and that's over a 5 or 6 day period, they need 800 caterpillars a day. And so if you want songbirds in your garden, then you have to feed the songbirds, and you need to put in plants that in turn will feed caterpillars. So so anyway, this is all Doug Ptolemy's work, which I've been reading and very inspired by, and I think he's dead on. So I think it's something that we need to consider as we are, you know, putting our plants in the ground. And again, this brown-hooded owlet moth, the moth itself is not very colorful, but the caterpillar is certainly gorgeous. And so this is on a goldenrod. So a lot of people think goldenrods are weedy, but you know, look what they're doing. So anyway, things to think about. Another question people always come up with, you know, as far as you know, plants, is are natives just as good as seedling varieties? And so some of the results that have come out, if you change the foliage color from green to purple, it no longer is what a caterpillar or an insect would normally be accustomed to. So they will oftentimes not eat a purple-leaved plant. So penstemon dark towers, it's a native plant, but the selection is not eaten as frequently as it would the green form. So this is species type. So again, you know, it's nothing wrong with putting some of these really cool cultivars in our garden, but then you also want to just put in some straight species. And the same thing goes with some of the cultivars of flowering plants. It's been found that they don't have the nectar content as great as the seedling type. So some are good, but then you also want to include just some species type that will, you know, feed our pollinators. So tonight we're going to be talking a lot about space, and you're like, oh my God, you know, some of my eyes are growing shut right now. But it's actually a very important part of the garden, and it's all about how you form the spaces that then become functional, that you enjoy using. And so this is a container down at Chanticleer, and they always float the flowers in the container every day. They cut them, and the container forms the space upon which you set the obviously the flowers. But in some cases, like this leaf here, they can extend beyond the enclosure. So it sort of makes you think, well, maybe you can put a window through the wall so that it expands and so forth. And so these are some of the thoughts that we'll be talking about tonight. So you know, this is what we all do. And you know, we get a house, and regardless of the size and so on and so forth, and we go, gee, it needs a foundation planting, and we think that's all it's got to do, and so we ring it with plants. And one of the things I think is interesting here is that we've got, you know, plant here on either side of the garage. We've got a little plant in the middle. Over here, we got a plant on either side of the windows, and we got something in the middle. And you know what we're doing? We're doing what we see in the mirror every day. We got two eyes, we got an ear, and we got nose. And so we are replicating what we see and then doing that in the garden. Whereas we are telling people by this that you should enter the house through the windows, not through the front door, even though it's painted red. So we're not highlighting the focal point, we're highlighting windows right now. So, so that's something that we should be thinking about. So this was a flower show that we did a number of years back. We had students design it, students built it, and then it was judged. And the students had a great time. It was the first time they were able to build a full-size model, and which was great. And they carved space. This isn't a warehouse. And they were able to carve up the space into something that was usable. And so this is the design. And so when you look at this, you know, first you're going, well, I don't get it, but let's go back. And this thing right here is becoming the base of the fountain, which is right here. And this deck right here is the deck right here. And so what we did was, this is the entrance right here. So here you have a linear space that comes along. There's a little window that you can peer through right here, which would be that philodendron leaf that was in the container. Then you turn to your left, you go this way, there's something to look at, but there's no reason to stop. And all of a sudden you hit this circle and you pause. And then you go down the steps and then you linger here. And maybe you sit on the bench, which is right here. Maybe you look at the fountain, which is right here. And then you exit stage left. And this was what the students did. And the reason that we stopped doing this was that what you see here is $40,000. And so, so it's amazing how much money you can spend on a small display. And there's my son sitting right there in the middle. And so when you walk through this, you know, again, you're walking. And so I didn't want to take pictures with people, but people didn't pause. They would look to the right, they would look to the left. They might look through the window, which is straight ahead to the fountain in the room next door. But they didn't pause in these linear spaces. The linear spaces kept them walking. And that's an important part when you start to design your spaces, that hallways, so to speak, and you have to consider these like hallways in a house. They have high energy and they push you through it. And you might look at, you know, here you have straight ahead, you have some bamboo that's uplit. So that could represent in a house a painting on the wall. Then you come to this landing and all of a sudden it's a circular space. Circular spaces have calm energy, low energy, and you stop, you pause, you relax, and then you walk down the stairs and then you sit in this space, and perhaps on the bench, or perhaps you look at the fountain. But the circular spaces make you stop. They make you pause. They make you appreciate things. And if you really want to see this in action, go to Central Park, go to the High Line, which is what we're looking at right here. And when you have an open space like we're looking at right here, then you see people pausing. You see this gentleman over here, the lady over to the right. They're looking at things and so forth, and they sort of pause. But when you come into this alleyway, into this hallway, that is when you walk. So nobody pauses in here. They're always marching through, and they don't stop to think about why they're doing that. But in a hallway, you always walk. You don't really stop and pause much. It's got higher energy. And then when you come out of that hallway and you come to sort of a circular area or a square area, something with more or less equilateral sides, that's when you stop. Obviously here you got some shade and you got benches, which is more of a reason to stop. But square, circular, octagonal spaces with equal sides are very calm and really want you to stop and sit. So this is a nursery out at the tip of Long Island, Landcraft, which on occasions have tours throughout the summer, and I encourage you. It's a great garden to go visit. But he has a circular area here set up with, and very simple. It's just got these wooden structures. And he doesn't have any benches inside it, so it doesn't make you stop to sit and linger, even though you want to, but it draws you right in. You look at that and you want to go in there. And then you want to stop and appreciate it. Those circular spaces have that magic that make you want to really sit, relax, enjoy. And especially when you bring it up at 8 feet off the ground, it really gives you that spatial feeling. Even if there's nothing between the top and the bottom, it's just the air, but it still gives you the feeling of space. Whereas when you look at this corridor, that makes you want to walk along. So this corridor is down at Longwood Gardens. And what's interesting is that they set the brick on edge. And when they did that, they created all these lines. And line is one of the elements of design. And when you see these lines, that are all going in one direction, it actually enhances or speeds up your pace. And so you start to walk faster because there's nothing perpendicular to say stop, except for this circle. And this circle right here, that griststone is telling you to stop and pause. There's something to the right. It could be a water feature, it could be a bench. In this case, it's just another walkway, but that is a visual cue that tells you to stop and pause, whereas all these running bond joints are telling you to move forward, move faster. And the same thing in this walk. But what's interesting is now the walk, see, in this case, the walk didn't really have a reason to make that turn. It looked interesting, it looked curious, but why did the walk turn? But here, there's a tree, and the tree says, well, got to put the path around the tree, right? That makes logical sense. You can't go through the tree. But what you don't realize is that the walkway went in first and the tree went in second. It was all part of a design. So you put the tree in to put the walk around it. So the tree in this case is the reason, that the logical sense that you're thinking, oh, that's why the walkway curves. So anyway. Now you have this walk, which has no running bond. It has no lines in it, and you actually walk slower. And so, you can actually tell your friends, guests, visitors, how quickly you want them to proceed through your garden based upon the paving pattern, which I always think is fascinating. So a lot of psychology in gardening, which I always love. So, I love this house. Hopefully the people that own it are watching. And so the question was, A, where's the front door? That's the focal point. B, where are the windows? C, do I need curtains? No. But there's no real space here. So, people, okay, they understand there's got to be a front door there. It's logical, so you go there. But the front yard is just grass, as far as I can see. And as far as I can tell, there's probably a little bit of enclosure here by the front door because there's this big plant right here. So there's probably a space behind it. But the point is, you don't really want to obscure the front door. And so what I thought we would do is look at this property and sort of see, well, if you looked at this, how would you set up the design so that you could start to spatially develop this homestead. And so it's, and I also like the fact that the mailbox is right here. So that gives us something to work with. It's sort of fun. Here's the backyard. So we have a pool off to the left. We have a deck area. It could be a patio or a deck. I'm not quite sure, but it's on grade. There is some spatial development here because obviously when you go into this area which has the roof on it, it has walls to it. So it's creating some space. The interesting thing though is that when you look out the back door, there's nothing terminating your view. So you're looking straight through and back. Here's the kitchen window. And when you look out the kitchen window, again, there's nothing to look at. And that's an important window. The kitchen window, which I'm sure the sink is just on the other side of that. That is an important. Do you know how many minutes or hours you spend in a day looking out that window? So that is a real important view. So always think about that. So when you walk around your home and look out which window do I look out a lot? What view is really important to me? And obviously the view out of the, assume it's a sunroom here, it terminates in this lattice work and probably a bench or something on the other side of it. So, but could we make that view a little more attractive? And here's the other side of the swimming pool, and you have this alleyway that goes back, but there's no way to exit it. So why would you walk down it? So, you know, it would make logical sense to put a gate at the opposite end. And then this is more for safety too, because if you ever had a fire, you really want the fire truck and the hoses and so forth to get around the house easily, so and quickly. So if it's barred here, they have to break down the fence, which takes time, and so on and so forth. So just a little safety things to think about. So the design process, and it's going to be different for everyone. I've known people that start on the left-hand side of the paper and walk and just work across. And then I know other people like me who are a little bit dumber, and we just sort of think, well, how do we lay out our spaces and make it all figure? And once we got the spaces figured out, then we go to, oh, well, let's start with the biggest stuff first, and that's the shade trees and the conifers. Then we work our way down to the small trees, then we work down to the shrubs, and we finally get down to the ground plane. And we hope that it turns out like we want. So, but how do you lay out the spaces? And so what is it that how do you do that? And so first you want to look at what do you need out of your garden. And this is called the program. So, and then, you know, how much space do you think each need of your program? How much space will each one require? How much do you want it to require? So that's an important part. And then each need is a circle. And so there was a gentleman named Roy DeBoer, and he started the landscape architecture program here at Rutgers. And he taught the class, which I took back in 1980. And he did these, he called it the blob diagram. And he would draw these circles. Now each circle is a space, and each one represents a patio or a pool or just an open grassy area or a focal point. And I just thought that this was what every garden designer did. And years later, we were talking, and he mentioned that he actually came up with that concept. So, so what you're seeing is actually something that came up. I would assume here he started at Cornell, where he got his undergraduate, came here for his graduate, but we'll give Rutgers the credit for it. So then you have to look at, so what do you want? What is your program? So maybe you want a patio, you want outdoor dining. So what size should that be? And so a minimal size would be 16 by 16, which sounds enormous, but we'll get to that as we go along. 20 by 20 is actually better. Maybe you want a patio to sit and converse. So you don't want a table per se, but you just want some chairs, maybe a small table in the middle, you know, something that you can have a drink around, or hors d'oeuvres, or just, you know, entertain. And that could be smaller. You want a vegetable garden. Well, how much do you want a vegetable? You know, how much do you do? You know, so that really is up to you. So is it something that's going to be a small little pocket area that's 10 by 10, or are you really into it and it's going to be, you know, 50 by 50? So that is up to you to what you want to do. And then if you want to be obviously with the times right now, we want to compost everything. So to be sustainable. So typical compost bin is 5 by 5, 6 by 6. But then how many of those bins do you want? Typically 3 is a minimum. But if you develop a lot of compost, then you're going to want to have more. Tot lot, do you have children, expecting children, want children, whatever. So how big do you want the swing set and the sandbox, the barbecue and the prep table? 4 by 6 is a sort of a minimal size. Fire pit and patio. Great to have to sit around on a cool night. Not like tonight, a little warm, but I heard that this weekend's going to be chilly, so that would be ideal for that. Do you want a water feature? And water features aren't just for us. The birds need a drink too. So you're going to get wildlife coming to your garden, all different birds, just to get a drink. So, and then think further, what do you want out of this? So you started to get your program together, little things. And so this is what I'm told that this homestead that we just looked at needs. So they want to enhance the front of the house from the street. They want curb appeal. And a couple other people told me that they want to improve their curb appeal. They want to retain the deck and the swimming pool in the backyard. Would love a vegetable garden. Fire pit could be cool, for the gentleman to sit around, maybe smoke a cigar, just stay warm. Definitely a barbecue area for the outside. Maybe a future tot lot. That's more on the mom's programming than the son's programming, but that's cool. Everyone's got to have their opinions. And then full-size basketball court with lighting. Size is questionable, and so is the zoning on that one. So that probably will not happen. So we want to really enhance that front walkway. We want to and enhance the front door. We want to see the front door. We want to connect the detached spaces in the back. You had a pool and you had a deck or patio area. And those two really are for socializing and so forth. So there's common grounds there. So they should really connect together. And then all the other programming you need to then overlay on top of what's already existing. So that's your challenge right now. So this is sort of where you start. And so I'm looking up there, and somehow the scale got off to one side, but you want to change the scale. And so everyone gets a plot plan when they buy a house, a survey, and usually the scale is 1 inch equals 30 feet. What you want to do, 1 inch is 30 feet is pretty small. And so you really want to enlarge that to 1 inch equals 8 feet. That's sort of a minimum. And you want to stick to 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch because they're on your tape measure. So it's really easy once you lay it out on a piece of paper to then go outside to the garden and actually implement it. So it's easy to measure. If you do it in 1/10 of an inch, it's a lot more challenging because then you need to buy a tape measure that's a surveyor scale, which are more expensive, and it's something you don't have in your closet. So why do that? And so you can see the scale on the left-hand side is 1 inch equals 30 feet because you see the 30 at the top of it. And then the one on the bottom, you can see it's 1/8 inch. And so, and this is everything here you could pretty much get at Staples. So you could get a small drafting table, you can get this trace paper, you can get the scales, and all I used was a Sharpie to do the lines. So nothing fancy here. So I took what was on the survey and then transferred that to this base map. And so here's the deck right here. Here's the swimming pool. Here's the house, the residence. Here's the front walk. Here's that low wall that was around the front of the house, obviously the drive. And here's the fencing. There's a gate on this side, and there's a little pad on the other side. And here's the fence that we saw on the other side that didn't have a gate. And this is the AC unit right there. So all that comes with the surveyor. So then you look at it and you start to lay out the spaces. And typically you don't do them this symmetrical. You don't bother using a circle template, which is what you see over here on the left-hand side to make the circles perfect. But I started to do it freehand, and then I was like, looks a little sketchy. So I thought, let's make it look a little bit easier. So So one of the things that you should do is put in your axes line. So this line here tells you this is an important view. You're viewing out the back door. This is the sunroom. And here's the garage doors up here. Here's the front door over here. Here's those side doors. And that's leading out to the existing patio or deck. And here's that covered area that we saw with the roof on it. But why end the view right there? Maybe the view should go just a little bit beyond that. And when you start to look at these view lines, they're very important because they connect the inside of the house to the outside. You make that visual connection, and that's really important. And then all the other spaces sort of relate to what it is that you're putting in. So here I labeled it. And so I looked at this, and so we got the vegetable garden up here in the back. And again, there's not a lot of room here for it, so because you got the pool and you need air, here's the kitchen. So it makes logical sense to have a barbecue close to the kitchen and a small patio area next to the kitchen. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for the vegetable garden. So that's why it's either back here or it's off to the side over here. And there's a large existing tree here. And what you can't see on this, because I cut it off, unfortunately, is the north arrow. And that's another important thing that comes with the survey, because the north arrow tells you where the sun is going. And in this case, south is in this direction over here. So the sun is coming up in the top right-hand corner. It's passing around like this, and then it's setting over here in the west. And as a result, anything that you plant on this side is going to shade what's on this side. So, so it's, again, if you put a vegetable garden over here, the existing tree is going to shade that garden. So, and then I also out front, notice how, developed this front is. A lot happening by that front door. That front door has a lot of going on. And so one of the things that I'm always keen on is when you walk to the front door, what are you looking at? And so, so in this case, I didn't want to look beyond the property because maybe there's a car over here on blocks, or there's a trailer, or there's an open garage door, or who knows what. You really want to contain the view on site. So that's what this is doing, is it's saying that the view stops, and this is planting right here. Same thing when your guests are leaving. You don't want your guests to look at the neighbor's garage either. You want them to look at something pleasant. So again, you stop the view right here with this space, and then the cross hatching is lines. And wherever you see the circles or the spaces overlapping, that tells you that you can see or pass through it. And wherever then it stops, and there's no other space, this is a wall. So this is something solid. So we got the fire pit on here. We got a water feature. I thought that might be nice. We got the compost over here next to the shed. I moved the shed from over here to up here. Put a pool deck on because I thought it would be nice. Move the stairs from here to over here because that makes a nicer connection to the deck back here. And potential tot lot, which could also be an herb garden, because you don't want to bury the tot lot back here because that's what my parents did. They go, well, stuff Junior in the back. We don't want to see him. We don't want to see the slides. We don't want to see whatever. But we've come to realize that we really need to see what Junior is doing. So we need to have that close to the house. And so I looked at this, and the one thing I didn't like was how the walkway, the circulation, and that's what these are. It goes past the pool and the stairs and past the vegetable garden and back to this shed. And this shed here just services the vegetable garden. And that just didn't seem really comfortable to me. I did like the fact that this is screened back here. And then I threw the water feature over here because I thought, well, gee, when you're sitting here, it might be a nice surprise. You don't know it initially until you walk out here. Then you see, ooh, a water feature. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, no, I don't know if I like that so much either. And maybe the fire pit here, because when you walk around this way, you look over the deck and right into the fire pit. I don't know if I like that. So, and in the front yard as well, there was more planting in here. So this, always make your sight lines at between 60 degrees and 45 degrees, or excuse me, 30 degrees and 45 degrees, because as you travel down the road, you never, typically don't look at 90 degrees. because you want to keep your eyes on the road. So you typically look at an angle. So you always want to keep your sight lines to the front door at an angle. And in this case, I thought, well, we could then terminate the view here and do an enclosure. But this is a lot of planting. And I was like, nah, that's too much planting. So then kept developing it. So, and these blob diagrams typically take about 10 or 15 minutes to do. So they're not, you don't have to make them this, perfect. So, so this sort of developed more space on the left-hand side of the house, more turf area. The fire pit now moved back to here from here, which, so again, when you walk around, you're looking into a space here, which I thought was nice. Now the water feature is the terminus of this view, which I forgot to put the arrow in, but that's an important view out. And tot lot stays the same, vegetable garden stays the same, but now the walkway back here comes around this way. And by the same token, we've opened up the front yard a little bit more. And so I thought this might be more appropriate for this house. And so then you take that to the next step and you start to hard line in what you think the shape of the beds could be. And this is going to change. And so sort of looking for some feedback in the week to come about this, but it's changing, because as you start to put in trees, you suddenly realize, oh, that's too small, too tight, to this, to that. But you keep, more or less, you keep your feeling, and you don't block, even though they're not on here for simplicity's sake, but you still have those views to the front door. So you don't start dropping shade trees right here where the trunks are going to obliterate that view. So you can put a shade tree over here because it would frame the view, but you don't put the trunk right in your way. So that's important. So and you can see where the barbecue area is. And in this case, we just made a turf and a small herb garden, which or a kitchen garden, which has application, and so on and so forth. So, and the fire pit's over here. And so if you had extra friends, you could put chairs around that on the grass and sit here and blah, blah, blah. So that was the initial concept of how the blob diagram worked out. And so it's easy. It's actually a lot of fun to do. And the other key thing is don't do both of these in one day. Do one day or a bunch, and then come back to them the next day and maybe look at them all and maybe do another one, combine them, or pick your favorite, or pick and choose different things from it. Because just that little bit of relaxing for the night and coming back to it with a fresh view really allows you to see it more clearly, and that's important. So then let's start to think about, how would we enhance that? So think about the elements of design as the threads of the design, and think of the principles of design as the loom, so to speak, that pulls it all together. And this is all in your handout, so this is, you can all certainly look back at this. But there are lines everywhere in the garden, from joints, brick joints on the wall, to brick joints and paving, to gutters, to on for items. So there's a lot of lines in the garden. The form is the shape of the plants or the structures. Are they arching? Are they upright? So on and so forth. Mass is the visual density. Color, that makes you know what that is, and obviously the texture, you know what that is. And there can be a strong connection between texture and form. So those are the elements, and these are the principles which guide the elements. And so simplicity is cool. So when we get too fussy, and so and I think a lot of that is because we grew up in a home where there are knickknacks in the living room. There's 4 different types of chairs. There's 7 different types of tables. There's 3 different rugs. So, and the only thing that unifies it is the paint on the wall. But when we get outside, we think, well, we'll do 7 types of shrubs here because that represents the 7 different chairs that we had in the living room, and we'll do 4 of these types of plants and 7 different colors because those represent the knickknacks on the curioso. So it's so in reality, when you go outside, you really need to be more simplified. Scale, of course, is important. Sequence relates to those, how one of the spaces that we sort of sketched out relates to the next space so that there's proper movement. Remember, we were talking about going from narrow walkways to larger patios, seating areas. If you've ever been to a Frank Lloyd Wright house, he was a master at this, because you would walk in the front door and he would have this tiny little vestibule that you'd walk into. The ceiling was low, there was no windows, it was dark. And then you would walk into the living room and suddenly the ceiling would raise, the windows were everywhere, and it felt bigger, more massive than it really was. And so it was just about moving those spaces. And so think about that if you're stumbling outside, it's really about taking the indoor environment and putting it outside. And so it's just how the size of the spaces relate. And so that's the sequence, going through those different sizes of spaces. Could also be sequence of color if you're doing a perennial border, which we'll get to in 2 weeks, and then obviously the change with the season. Balance is the visual weight on either side of an axis, and focalization is enhancing that focal point, the thing that we see at the end of the sight line. So this, this is what we deal with. So this is an office space, but it's busy. Look at all the stuff in there. And so we just take all that stuff and we just sort of translate it into shrubs outside. And then we get screwed up with our scale because, here we got a huge allocation. Why is that sitting there? I have no idea. Actually, I do know why, but in any case. But the point being is that we see this in our homes, and then we transfer it outdoors, and then we can't understand why it doesn't look appropriate. So, and this is a classic. So here you have the on new architecture anyway. Here you have the garage, but it projects out towards us, and people are going to probably be parking off to the right-hand side. And when they park over there, they can't see the front door because this thing is in the way. And so somehow you have to create spaces that pull people in and gets them to the front door, and that's the important part. So, and when you look at this, your eye goes right to the front door. I mean, obviously there's color, but there's also very simple lines on either side, and they're below the windowsill, which is important. Doesn't look like the house is getting eaten. Could be a little larger area here by the front door, because I always harp on this, but I think the front door, that's where all the hugs and hellos and goodbyes and handshakes happen. And this is a very important part of the home. Here we're looking at 2 spaces. It might initially look like one, but the area down below, the steps, are actually the connection. So this is one space here, which is sort of the drop-off space. This is the next space. And even though the hedges are at a right angle here and they're curved over here, it still feels like a space. And so that's what we're looking at. So if you have a change in grade, you typically always have a couple of spaces, because that change in grade denotes spaces. Here, this is off the street, so you're not so much worried about what the public sees. But I love, in this case, how they put the window on axes with the pond. So when you're in here, when you look out, you see this water feature, which is, I think, very magical. And then what they do is, when they have parties, they just line the tables up around the swimming pool. Yeah, could be a swimming pool, I don't know, but around the pool, so that, and this is where they entertain. So I just think that's a great idea. So if you have a house that looks like that and it's set off the road. And just way too much here. And again, they went to, here's the nose and the 2 eyes. So the first thing, take a chainsaw, cut that down. And then put in a mass here. They got the cherry laurel on this side as a hedge. So, over here, you just need to put things together as a hedge. And so that you start to really look here, as opposed to here, 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 here. That's what's happening. And enhance this a little bit so that you can have your hellos and goodbyes. So when you look at this area, and then you looked at this plan, wow, go back. There's a lot happening right here that needs to happen. So there's a lot of view sheds, a lot happening. So that's an important part of the garden. And here it's very formal. The walkway obviously honors the steps. It goes to either end of them, which is perfect. but there's not a lot of room here to sit, relax, and enjoy, not sit and relax, but to shake hands and to hug. So people are pushed off to the side, you step on the roses. So this area here really is an important part of the front yard. So if you're tuning up your front yard to sell the house, make sure that this is big enough, because people will notice that. And oftentimes this is too small, so when they open the screen door, they actually knock you off the front patio. So this is an important detail. And don't put any of these by the front door. People always think, oh, it's a nice sweeping thing, it'll attract people's attention. You'll scare people half to death at night. I mean, this looks like a skeletal hand coming out to kill you. So you know, they're fine, they're fun, they can really be worked very, very well into gardens. And so we'll look at them a little bit next week. But by the front door, they can be a little scary. So just up on. We talked about we're going through now the principles of design, the elements of design. If you ever get to Michigan, and obviously we're not doing much traveling these days, but the Frederick Meyer Sculpture Garden is really a cool place to go visit. And so I was walking along this road here, and it looks like they've sort of forgot about it. You know, there's all this goldenrod growing up and goldenrod over here, and it just rained. It looks sort of desolate. And but this is when you got to this is just like that stone at that brick walkway at Longwood Garden, that griststone that was in the middle. It tells you to stop and to pause and to look. And so if you look to your right, you'll see this. And that's such a dramatic difference, because you went from no care, or seemingly no care, to a lot of care. And it just blows your socks off. And so sort of the yin and yang thing. And so, but again, when you look at this, what's fun about it is that the hornbeams here have created this space with their branches, which then frames this, which in turn is the focal point. So that just how they set up the plants and organized it really focuses your eye on the focal point. So that's when they say, you know, when you look at things and you go, what is focalization all about? Focalization is about using plants to really make your eye land on the focal point, or it could be using architecture. So, so that's what focalization is all about. Here we're looking at the bench, and you know, so it's that's fine. So it's very formal, works. A little less formal. This is down at Chanticleer. So you know, you got the alliums on either side here, but then you got your three Japanese umbrella pines back here. But then you got a river birch over here, but you don't have it over here. So this is sort of breaking up a little bit. But I loved how they didn't cut the side grass, because they put daffodils in it. You can't cut the daffodil foliage until late June. So what they did was like, fine, we'll just cut the center, which is what people are walking down. We'll honor the urn at the far end, and then the daffodil foliage can go dormant. We'll save money and gas on cutting and labor, and so we'll just let it grow. And I just thought this was genius. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then if you get the chance to go to Wave Hill, which is in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, and we're looking at the Hudson River off in the background there and the Palisades, this is a formal, it's 4 equal squares, but very informal. And how they set it up is there's a strong central axis to the greenhouse, which you can't see, but it's over here. And so that links the inside to the outside, just like these arrows here and back here are linking the inside of the house to the outside of the house. And the one especially here, this is a very strong axis, that water feature. And then they have a strong feature in the middle of that walkway. So the shot here, I was standing here when I took, well, I was standing over here, but this image that's in here is looking out in this direction along the walkway. So what you're seeing is I was standing here in that form of thing, and this is the background. So here we have this tripod with a vine on it. And again, the 4 Irish yews around it, which sort of give it that formality. Here we have the Irish yews, but now notice we went to this very spiky thing. And that spiky thing, which is Fucreia, really attracts our attention. So all of a sudden, now we're looking at focalization. So we're looking at, notice that they raised the pavement slightly. Notice now that they got the 4 yews, which we saw before. sort of framing that center part. But now you've got this spiky thing. The spikes really attract your attention. And then this year they kept with the spiky things, but they added real color to it. So now you got the acme in there, one called Hawaii, which is bright orange. But then they actually enhanced that by using orange colors around it. Oh, every time I touch the mouse, things move. But so here you got an orange dahlia, and you put that, which obviously looks nice with the blue aster. But when you get in there, that orange dahlia complements the Hawaii bromeliad. So that bromeliad, you're using, it's the focal point, it's what people look at, but then you're enhancing it through the use of color and through the use of paving. So when you look at things now, if you go there, don't just go, oh, look, there's some pretty flowers. Now look, oh, wow, look, there's a central axis. Look at how they got the focalization going. Look at how they, instead of the Irish yews, now you've got these four plinths on either side that frame it. So anyway, cool stuff. Same sort of central axes is down at Atlanta Botanic Garden, which is an awesome garden to go visit. And you got a chihuly here right in the middle, which is probably about 40 grand. But notice how they clip the boxwoods. And when they clip them, it makes it and it's a very dark green, but it gives it more visual weight and mass. So if you want to enhance the visual weight, the mass of a design, shearing is an easy way to do that. Dark green also has a very heavy mass to it, as does dark purple, whereas white and yellow tends to be more flighty and tends to have less visual weight. So, so again, on the elements of design, we were talking about mass, and so this is what it's referring to, is just how much weight, visual weight, does it have. Scale, obviously, if it's disproportionate, it's funny. And that's meant to be funny, by the way. That's in a children's garden. This is down at Chanticleer, and they have in front of the house, they have this raked gravel. And I always have to stop the students because they don't see the raked gravel and they want to go walking out into it. And one year they had these pots, and they enhanced the containers by raking around them. So it enhanced the focal point. But to me, they were just a little small, and they could have been bigger or more impressive. And I'm never going to put down Chanticleer, awesome garden, but just if I was going to say what would I do with it, I'd say I think I'd make them a little bit bigger. Whereas here at Longwood, they made them bigger. And oh, come on, go for it. So here we have the large container in the center. Again, notice it's raised, so that brings attention to it. But this is more proportionate to the scale of that setting. Simplicity. Again, to me, simplicity works best if you work with two of the elements. And so here we have texture and line. So the color is all green except for the focal point, which is the gate at the far end, which is white. The line is the wood chip path or mulch path leading through the garden. And then you have the texture. You have the ostrich ferns and you have the hostas. So you have obviously that. So you've reduced it, but it's a very effective, very calming, very soothing garden to walk through. And then lastly, I'd just like to focus on a little bit on color. Color is good for an hour and a half discussion. So we're actually reducing about 3 months of classes into an hour. So I'm trying to get this through. But color is what we respond to most. And so, and a color wheel is just a cool element to use. And so when you look at opposite colors on the wheel, they are complementary colors, and they will produce the most vivid punch. So, so red and green are obviously they're opposite on the wheel, but the red will really punch out. It will come towards you if you have a green background. Same thing if you have yellow and violet. And if you use adjacent colors, which are harmonizing, then you produce a very soothing color design. And so this wheel right here is just a wonderful thing to work with. And there's a handout just on color that is available to you tonight. And we just look at a very tiny, tiny part of the wavelengths. And so, so we see this little narrow part right there, which if the cursor would get going, I could show you. There it is. And then this is what insects see. So insects see ultraviolet light. So what they look at, when they look at a flower, they don't see what we see. So so it's, you know, that's also important for you to understand to a degree if you're working with insects. But but it's that little narrow band that we're the most fascinated with. And that's what we see. And we're all going to see that band differently. In case anybody was curious, that's just straight water. And so, so you might get into an argument with somebody, and somebody will say, well, no, that's violet. And you'll say, oh, no, that's purple. And you say, no, it's got more red in it. And you go, no, it's got more blue in it. Well, that's all because we all see colors differently. And so, so if you are able-sighted, you would see this right here. But if you are colorblind, you see this. And then we all see things in between. And this is, mostly this is a male-dominant gene issue, color blindness. But there are other issues too. So and it's all in the brain. So each of us obviously are wired slightly differently. So we're all going to see color slightly differently. So if your significant other is saying that, no, this is so-and-so, and you say, no, it's this, you're both right. So because your brain is interpreting the wavelengths differently. So just always keep that in mind. And this I always find interesting because this was done by proven winners, and they looked at what do people want the most in color. And so if you go into garden centers and you see a lot of purple flowers and you go, well, why aren't more reds or blues? They come off of things like this, where people will come in and they'll survey people, and who they're surveying is mostly women, because men don't go in and buy flowers for whatever reason. I love flowers, but in any case, so if men were mostly surveyed, there'd be more red and yellow on this, and because men need more concentrated color, it seems, and this is for East Coast North America. So I have to point that out too. If you did this survey in Africa, South America, Australia, India, it would be different. And it all depends upon the intensity of the sun. But for this part of the world, this is what the response is. And it's driven by who they are asking the questions of. And so just sort of going through so you get a little understanding of what colors are all about. White reflects all the colors of the spectrum. So they're all bounced back to us. And so our eye sees all of them and interprets it as white. It deepens and intensifies the neighboring color. It doesn't have successive contrast. I'll get to that in a second. And it attracts a lot of attention. People think if they use white in a garden, it's neutral, but actually white really we focus on the white, and it just bounces back at us. And so, and you notice here how dark the foliage is adjacent, and that's because the white colors actually deepen the colors that are adjacent to it. Black, which in plants is really a dark purple, but it actually brightens the neighboring colors. So white deepens and intensifies them. Black lightens them. So so here we have Ophiopogon, ebony night, Submissifuga over here, hillside black beauty, and here we have a coral bell back here, one of the many of the dark purple forms. So which obviously contrasts nicely with the yellow, but they're really dark purple. So gray enhances the purity, and it does not draw a lot of attention, and it makes men nervous. And so we men, as I said, we like brighter colors. We like reds and yellows. And when we're submersed in gray, which doesn't have a lot of color, we get a little antsy. And so, so again, when you use gray, use it sparingly. It's very effective. But when I walked into the gray room, the Mediterranean room down at Longwood, this is going back to the 80s when I didn't really think much about the color and the psychology of it. I didn't like this room. I just walked right through it, and I was like, not so much. And then all of a sudden, I was mentioning this in class, and Bruce Hamilton, who I co-taught with, and other people went, yeah, and those other people were male students, said, yeah, you know what, I wasn't that crazy about that room either. But all the ladies in the room went, "Oh, why? I thought that was really nice." And one year they hung these orchids in there, and that made it cheerier, and I really liked it. So, and now that I've sort of gotten over the gray thing, now I look at the agaves and I go, "Wow, look at that plant! Look at the leaves! Look at how that leaf left that impression on that leaf." I sort of forget about the colors now, and I focus on the plants. But point is if you use a lot of gray in the gardens, make sure that you enhance it with some reds or some yellows to sort of counteract the activity of the gray. Green produces a very calm, balanced feeling. It releases tensions, lowers blood pressure. It's a natural focal point of the eye. And I say that because if the monitor of your laptop was green, that would be where your eye would focus. If it was red, you would have to refocus to a plane in front of the screen, so it would tend to advance towards you. And if it was blue, it would be behind the screen, and well, that's where your eye would focus. So then the blue objects tend to move away from you. So depending what the color is, it can either advance towards you, move away, or be exactly what you see. And we can see more shades, which are darker colors, and tints, which are lighter colors of green than any other color. So if you want to do a texture garden and use different shades and tints of green, it would be a really magical garden, and it would lower your blood pressure. It'd probably make you live longer. So, so here's an all green room down at Chanticleer, and just working with textures, which I think works very nicely. Working with lines too, obviously. And this is just very calming and very soothing. And so you just follow the hedges around and sort of trace them. And you can just imagine if they substituted the boxwood every now and then for a purple barberry or a yellow something or another, it would be very jarring and unattractive. Whereas all green, it's very soothing and very simple. Aside from white, red is the first color that we see. It sort of symbolizes those stronger color, love and aggression, and also anger, which is sort of interesting. How love gets in there with anger, but Valentine's Day, red heart, so on and so forth. It increases blood pressure, increases tension, and as I mentioned before, appears to move towards the viewer. So they found out in hospital rooms, if they put a garden outside the hospital room and it's mostly green, patients leave on average 1 day earlier. If they were going to put red in there, that would be bad. Heart attack victims might not leave the room. So, be careful. Red is, a lot of energy in red. So red is cool because it attracts hummingbirds. So this is cardinal flower, and hummingbirds, they can visualize that. Look at this. This is a Dale Chihuly, and that red with the green backdrop. So again, now you've got complementary colors. The red and the green lawn are complementary, so they enhance each other. And that, and just the fact that it comes to a point and it's red is really driving up your emotions right now. It's making your blood pressure a little bit higher. And I love that. The first thing I thought of when I saw it was like, wow, how do they cut the grass? And being a typical horticultural nerd. And there's little cups in the ground if you're curious. And so they take all the glass pieces out, they run the lawnmower over the whole thing, and then they put the glass pieces back. So, and of course, the other thought I had was if you're a parachutist and that was what you saw below you, what would you think? So, but again, you can see here the red Dracaena in this view down at Longwood. You can see how those spiky things in the red adds a little energy to that composition. So, so again, red and shapes do a lot with what our emotions. And then at Duke Gardens, just that that nice very pastoral view there, and that the Monet Bridge in red really pops out. That works really, I think, very well. And then blue, it's background color like the sky, can be very tranquil and distant, and it appears to move away from you. So it's more distant. So blue always is more blue or more telling in the shade. So something always to remember. And then look at these. So same exact thing as that, but they're blue. And that doesn't bother me very much. I mean, I don't mind the other one either, but but this to me seems rather soothing and cool, and the Russian sage underneath it, and the contrasting balls. I just think that this has a very calming effect, whereas this has an energizing effect. So again, color and shape really impacts us a lot. So it's something to think about. So I went 5 minutes over, but considering that was 106 images, that wasn't too bad. And I always like to end up with my children. But this sort of gives you a preface, a foundation, I hope, on which to think. And so there's a lot here. That was, as I said, that was several hours of lectures in one. So that was a lot to sort of digest in an evening. But the fact that for space, it really is important that you think of circles or something that is equilateral, equal on all sides. That is a very calming space. And to really make that more true, if you have a long rectangular living room and there's a fireplace on one side, what do people do? They make a square space around the fireplace because that feels soothing for some reason. So anyway, and then the narrow spaces, the hallways sort of propel you through. So something to think about. So anyway, think some more. Are you there, Lisa? Do we have piles of questions or?
We had lots of wonderful comments about how wonderful you are. So those are the kinds of comments I love to see. If anyone has a comment that they would like to post to the chat for Bruce to answer, please do so now. Oh, you're being asked if you chose blue for a reason, for your shirt.
No. It was just sort of there in the closet, and I said, "Oh, there's a nice shirt." Good question, though.
Yes. I posted the handouts again because what I learned was if the handouts only go to the people who were in the meeting when they're posted. So I posted them again to everyone. So hopefully if you got kicked out and came back in again, you still had access to them. They're in the chat box.
It's funny, too, since you measured that. If you've noticed that the presidential candidates, when they wear a red tie and when they wear a blue tie, that's very important.
That's interesting. The question here is, will it be recorded? Yes, it was recorded. And as long as the technology is working, you will receive a link to the recording. And someone's still having trouble with the handouts. Oh, there's a question about pollinators. Do pollinators have a preference for certain colors?
Yes, they do. Hummingbirds in particular sort of really gravitate to red. That's their favorite. I don't know in specifics which pollinators, which go to yellow versus blue versus something else. The flower shape also has a great deal to do with which pollinators go to which shaped flowers. So there's a combination of effects there. But and I don't know this for a true fact, but I would wager a fair amount of money that pollinators are specific to certain colors, and so they are attracted to that. Also, flowers develop fragrance, not for us, but to attract pollinators. So all that goes into the play.
There's a question about some slides of small yard designs because having trouble visualizing some of those ideas in a smaller yard. But
so think of it's the same thing. So if you have a yard that's let's say it's 30 by 30, you're going to put in a patio area, assuming that you want a patio area. You would draw a circle that's roughly 16 feet in diameter. The reason for that is we'll accommodate a 5-foot table, chairs, and then allow you to circulate around it. So it seems large, but that's the space that you need. But then you could also then do like a little small space off to one side of that, and then which is fairly hidden. So it's just a fairly narrow door going into it. So in the weeks to come, next week I'm going to show a little bit of the gentleman's garden in Rhode Island. John Gwynn. He was the landscape architect for the Bronx Zoo for a number of years. And he and his partner put together this really magical garden space that is, it's about twice the size of the room that in, maybe 3 times, but it's a small area, but when you walk through it, it seems immense because, again, he's used space so effectively. So you got these narrow passages that are maybe 6 to 8 feet wide that lead to a slightly larger area that may be 10 foot in diameter. So, my recommendation is, sketch out your backyard or the space that you're looking at, and then start to play with, individual rooms. How would, here's the room. Here's a little seating area off to one side that might have a water bubbler in it or something that would, make me want to gravitate to it to sit and read a book or to study bees or whatever, you're focusing on that in that space.
I think there was another question in here about evergreen. Do you have any suggestions for low-growing native evergreen or shrub that will have color all year round for the front of a house that doesn't obstruct windows?
So the native evergreen, that's so there's and it depends how low you want it. There's a American holly called Maryland spreader, I think, which gets up to 4 to 5 feet tall. You can prune it to keep it lower. But one of the reasons why you see a lot of Asian or European plants used, like boxwood and so forth, is that we have relatively few low-growing evergreens. There are some dwarf forms of mountain laurel that will get up to about 4 feet or so in height that I've used over the years that are really quite nice. But again, you're going to need a lot of them together, so that runs up a price tag. Trying to think what else is out there that would be, I mean, again, there are junipers, which are native to the Great Lakes area. Junipers horizontalis is certainly a North American native, which you could use. And I love, it's not a ground cover, but Eastern red cedar. Everybody sort of puts it down as a junk tree. Writing a newspaper article that's going out this weekend. But it's a great native tree, and so people, it's small, it occupies a small footprint, it's upright and narrow, great for the cedar waxwing birds with the female fruits on it, and you might want to consider that too for a taller evergreen. But for shorter ones, I'll give it some thought over the next week, and maybe I'll start with maybe an image of it, or if you want to email me, I'll write you back.
Question about whether it's crazy to plant bushes or anything right now.
Oh, no. This is the best time to plant. So yeah, that's why we're having this talk right now. So I mean, yes, you can think about this over the winter and then plant in the springtime. But right now, in the article I was writing, which should appear in the Star Ledger and some other things, Asbury Park Press. So look out your windows right now. And so where's you see, if you've got some spaces that are developed nicely and you're happy with the spaces, but you're looking out and go, gee, I need some red berries over there, or I need an evergreen over there, because right now as the leaves are dropping, you're able to see these things. And so jump on it and sort of think, ooh, gee, what could I use that has nice red berries? And so you might want to pick up some of our native viburnums. And one of the things that I learned, if you're wanting to feed the wildlife, is that our native shrubs that have red or purple fruits are much higher in fat content. So say the birds are able to survive better on them throughout the wintertime. And whereas if you go to beautyberry, for example, calicarpa, which is a beautiful plant, but apparently and beautiful blue fruits, but they're not as high in fat content, so they won't sustain the bird population throughout the winter. American hollies, again, great for red berries. So look at where you need some red fruits in the fall or in late winter, or where you need evergreen, and then run out to your garden centers, because a lot of them are having sales right now, and see what you can find.
Well, that looks like that's everything. I think someone asked a question about if the upcoming session, we'll talk more about perennials and color with perennials.
You betcha. So that's the last. You got to come next week because next week we talk about the shrubs, which then play off of the. But the last week is mostly on perennials and ornamental grasses. It's sort of the ground plane, which sort of connects and pulls everything together.
Okay. Okay. And shade plants was another request too, whether that would be discussed more.
Yep.
Yes.
Is it shade shrubs or shade perennials?
Shade plants. I think it was just shade.
Okay. Well, we'll deal with shade.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I am going to save the chat as some people had trouble getting a hold of the handouts, and I will email those folks that put the request for that in the chat box. I'll be able to email those out to you. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I know some of those faces out there.
Thank you so much.